What if? What if these sorts of things happened this fall? I'll give you an example. Here's the first one that we went with tonight. Nate hit us up and said, what if the college football playoff is comprised mostly of just the top transfer portal teams? This would be a really big deal. Number one, because it would mean some new teams were in the playoff. But number two, it would really challenge some college football worldviews out there. Remember when Michigan State did their thing a couple of years ago, and they leaned heavy on the portal, and then all of a sudden they went on a run, but then last year, they crashed and burned. And so you had the crowd that was worshiping at the altar of the transfer portal saying, look, Mel Tucker's revolutionizing the game. And then the detractors said the next year, nope, it was all fool's gold. And in reality, we're still so new in the entire transfer portal era, the book hasn't been written. So someone's going to end up doing some stuff for the first time, as is the case with anything new. And there will be rules and there will be exceptions to the rule. But think about what if there was from Nate. If the playoff is comprised mainly of transfer portal teams, so you're looking at your Florida States or your USCs or LSUs, Oklahoma, Miami's kind of leading on the portal. If a handful of those teams make up the playoff, it'd be one of the biggest what ifs in the sport. He's not saying one now. I mean, one of those odds are probably do make it in this year. You got a really impressive list there. But if like 2 or 3 of them are in there, if Florida State, LSU, and USC were all in the playoff, you'd have a fundamental shift in the way a lot of people look at this sport. A lot of people think, for example, and they're kind of married to the idea that you can't be leaning on the portal. You can use it to supplement your roster, but you have got to recruit, just make up a percentage, 75 or 85% of your roster the old-fashioned way. I'm a believer in that, by the way. Now, if I were a new head coach, I'd do exactly what Lincoln Riley's done. I probably wouldn't take a job where I had to do exactly what Deion's done, but make no mistake, I would portal like crazy. If I were Mike Norvell at Florida State, I'd do exactly what he's done, and then I would try and transition it into a more traditional approach, but if they expect wins out of me immediately, I got to go get good players immediately. But anyway, if the playoff is made up of those teams, all of a sudden, you may have someone or a group of someones look around and say, hey, talent acquisition is just talent acquisition. And maybe if we landed on Earth today and we weren't married to the old way of thinking and old way of doing things, we would rightly look around and say it doesn't matter where the players come from as long as we get them. I'm pointing at you like the Uncle Sam poster if you're listening on podcast. There would be enough changing in the ideology where this would impact the sport. So let's keep an eye on it. Next up, this would be a disaster in Norman. Peter said, what if Oklahoma just gets dominated by Texas, ... again? I know you have wiped this from your memories out there in Sooner Country, but the rest of the country does remember the final of this game was 49-0 last year. I don't know if you can tell by the score, but they had some QB issues at Oklahoma. This was the worst loss in the history of that series. It was gross. I was there 1 year earlier, and it was like one of the greatest games in the history of that series, the highest scoring game in the history of that series. And I did not go back last year, and I really feel like I made the right decision. Time will tell whether we're there this year. You know my preference, but time will tell. If this happened, this would do a world of damage to Brent Venables. I'm pulling for the dude, but if he took another beating anywhere close to on par with 49-0, rivalry games mean so much in this sport. They should. I'm not looking to change that at all. I'm not the one that tries to overthink the room and say, now I know you just got drugged by 42 by Texas, but you wouldn't hear me saying that the next day. You didn't hear me saying it the day after last year. It was embarrassing. It was terrible. Even in your first year, it's terrible. Now, I didn't say, fire this bum. Nothing like that. But you lose again this year, anywhere close to that magnitude, yes, it would be a really big deal. I'm not even here to tell you otherwise. The line, for the record, is Texas -6 right now. There was no point spread that would ever predict something like this, is my point. But what would this also mean for Texas? Last time Texas even won back-to-back, last time Texas, hey, is this right, Jesse? The last time Texas did what back-to-back years? That's crazy. I thought I remembered it differently. Okay, so this is written right in front of me. The last time Texas won back-to-back games in this series, the Red River shootout series, that is also a rivalry, was 08 and 09. All of the 20 teens, Texas didn't win back-to-back. So that would be significant if they win by 1 or 100. But put yourself in the shoes of an Oklahoma Sooners fan for just a second and picture yourself still sort of shaken, coming off 49-0, and then you go into Dallas this year, and the line is, let's just say it is what it is, Texas -6. Let's say it doesn't change. You've got your keys to victory. You got your path to an upset. You've probably bet Sooners money line, and it's 35-10 at the half. And it is 48-17 the final. And that's the last game you play against Texas before both of you guys move to the SEC. So they're moving to the SEC with a whole balloon full of confidence. And you're entering the toughest conference in America with questions, not knowing if you got the right head coach. Obviously, that's unacceptable. So obviously, this is a really big what if. Next up, this one personally just drags me into the mud every time. Jeff said, what if a G5 team goes undefeated? Well, Jeffrey, here's what would happen. A gigantic argument would ensue. Nobody would win. We would just all be losers. Who's the closest to doing this year? Tulane has the highest preseason over-under win total. Out of all the G5 teams, they got the sweetest looking end zone too. Out of all the G5 teams, Tulane has an over-under of 9. And then Jesse tells me there are 8 of them at 8.5. And those are your Boise's, Liberties, Troy's. Hey, Troy, look, I'm investing in Troy football. I don't know if they're watching and they can put that in the hype video. I'm investing in Troy football. So put that on the record. James Madison's up there. Fresno's up there. The conversation with the G5 playoff thing's always a dead end because here's what it sounds like. You've heard it because we've done it on this show before. You've either got crowd number 1 that says they're undefeated, they deserve a shot to play for a championship. And then you've got the other crowd. I happen to be in the other crowd. And the other crowd says, yes, they absolutely do deserve a shot to play for a G5 championship. And then the first crowd starts saying, good, we agree. And then there's a silence. And then the first crowd goes, wait a second, did you say G5 championship? And the second crowd says, yes, that's exactly what I said. Because it is absurd that this sport has grouped 130 plus teams into allegedly the same neighborhood. That is not how college football should actually be divided up. There are obvious tiers of have and have less, and then have a little bit less than that, and then have not, and then poverty, and they shouldn't all be lumped into one, playing a vastly disproportionate strength of schedule in the process, but then being told at the end of the day, well, you are what your record says you are. No, you're not. And no, going undefeated in your G5 conference does not automatically mean you deserve a shot at anything, and it's not your fault. I'm having to direct it at you because you're normally the one I have the argument with. It is not on Coastal Carolina. It is not on UL Lafayette. It is not on Tulane. It's not their fault. A long time ago, it should have been understood in this sport that we have tiers. It is ludicrous to suggest Coastal Carolina and Ohio State play the same sport, and therefore Coastal Carolina should always have had their own championship to chase, just like the FCS does. But no, we didn't do it that way because we wanted a shot of that BCS pie, and I get it. Again, we go back to the money shift, don't we? I get why it is the way it is, but in the spirit of competition, it shouldn't be the way that it is. So that's what would happen. The what if Tulane were to go undefeated, it would be, here's what would happen. So if you look at their schedule, did we already show that, Colin? I don't even know if we have it. Tulane's schedule, just to give you an idea of the hypocrisy in this sport. Tulane plays, by my memory, one Power 5 opponent this year, and that is Ole Miss at home. There are people who would look at Tulane, God bless Tulane, went down there last year. We took the Every Given Saturday to Tulane. So don't call me a green wave hater. But there are people who would watch Tulane play a schedule with a grand total of one Power 5 opponent on it, and they would say if they were undefeated, they deserve a shot at a championship. Those same people are the ones who look at Georgia and say, shame on you for only playing 8 SEC teams. Do you see the hypocrisy here? Like, do you understand how crazy that is? I go back to our buddy, the alien, all the time. Sometimes we summon him and we bring the ultra-intelligent but ignorant of college football alien to Earth, and we deliver him the facts as they are. Here's the situation, alien. What do you think? The alien looks around, and you've heard aliens talk. We've all seen signs. So he clicks and clacks, and someone translates, probably Google. And it turns out the alien is saying, you guys have this strength of schedule thing pretty warped. This is not that difficult to figure out. The alien is right, but the alien's not emotional, and everybody else in the argument is. So it would be a great big mess of a what if. That is the answer. Lastly, as far as what ifs go tonight, Kelly, I don't even know what this means, but Iowa is on its own scale when it comes to offense. So Kelly just says, what if Iowa has an offense? That's it. That's the end of the sentence. What if Iowa has an offense? It was bad last year. It was historically, catastrophically bad last year. That's why all those coaching staff changes were made. I'm being told nothing changed. Just some caveats in the OC's contract. Okay, so actually nothing changed up there. They were 88th or worse in points per game 3 of the last 4 years. Not ideal. They had 17.7 points per game nationally. Last year, that was 123rd. Just here's how bad it was. There were games last year where their defense allowed 9 points and 10 points, and they went 0-2 in those games. That's how bad it was last year. If they have an offense, whatever that means, they probably win the Big Ten West is the answer. And if they have an offense this year, judging by what it actually takes to get shown the door, if the alternative were to happen one year and they actually have an offense, Brian Ferentz is probably leading Iowa as head coach into the 2030s because they're terrible offensively and nothing happens up there. If they're actually good offensively for a year, they're going to name streets after that guy. They're going to name days after that guy. They will. I don't know if I want to say that. No, I don't. Good for me, by the way. What a filter I just showed. Because I was going to say something that was very funny, but also very offensive, probably unnecessary. So I'm not going to do it. I'll leave it to our buddy Lucy Roden up there. You know what? If she wants to turn it loose, I'll DM her what I was going to say. Iowa and a good offense. They brought in a ton of transfer talent, so it's not like they're not going to technically try. But, I can try and be 6'8" all I want to. 6'1's the best I can do for you.